Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. Dada, with episode 840 of your favorite professional wrestling podcast. That's right, Getting Over is back once again, and we are here with a rare weekend edition of the show to not only break down everything that happened in AEW this week, but cover the tentpole items, the big headlines from New Japan Pro Wrestling's Wrestle Kingdom 20. They always start the year with their biggest show, and there were definitely major news items coming out of Wrestle Kingdom. We have a loaded show for you today, even if it is an odd publish time for us here at Getting Over. So as we get started, allow me to remind you that this show
is all about Defy.
So be sure to head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time for us. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media at Getting Overcast on Twitter and Blue Sky. You get episode drops, news, analysis, highlights. You can send in questions and comments for the show that we will read on the air. On YouTube, you can listen to our episodes and you can watch full-length video interviews. No matter where you want to find us, you can do so at Getting Overcast. Now, in terms of the schedule and this show getting published Saturday morning as opposed to what would normally be Thursday, look, we're dealing with football playoffs from both college football and the NFL right now. I originally planned to get this going on Friday because we separated out some of the episodes. And then SmackDown, of course, aired at 2 p.m. and there was a WWE Championship match in the main event. I wanted to watch that live. So, decisions had to be made. Also, got a flu shot and a COVID shot at the same time. Arm was killing me, but also just really run down and tired. So now that the energy is back and the playoffs are going down with Wild Card Weekend for the NFL, wanted to make sure we got this show out before all of that began. We're going to kick things off talking New Japan Pro Wrestling. Then we will break down everything that happened this week in AEW. There will be timestamps in the episode description as always. So if you just really don't care about New Japan or you're not familiar with it and you don't want to know, you can skip around. But considering it is the retirement of Hiroshi Tanahashi, which was a major, major item for Japanese wrestling, just as John Cena's retirement was for American wrestling, we of course wanted to ensure that we gave it proper time here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. So let's indeed start with NJPW Wrestle Kingdom 20. We're only going to be covering the co-main event of the show. The rest of it was mostly worthless, despite being New Japan's biggest show of the year. I'm not suggesting it was poor quality or anything like that, just in terms of making headlines, especially, if we're going to be frank, like, given my level of interest in New Japan recently, this was very much a two-match card for me. The only thing I saw ahead of time was that Andrade El Idolo wrestled and the dude looked yoked out of his damn mind. If you didn't believe that he was legitimately suspended by WWE for some type of performance enhancers, then one look at him here told you that was probably true. That's the best way I can put it. So let's get to the co-main event, the IWGP Unification match. Konosuke Takeshita, the world champion, against Yota Tsuji, the global champion. The story of this match was Takeshita being a cold, ruthless wrestler who left Japan, whereas Tsuji represented the tradition of New Japan, wanting the company to grow from the inside out, not the outside in. That's why both titles were on the line, so that one ideology could win and lead the company forward. It was particularly appropriate, given the Tanahashi retirement, for it to happen on the show. Another cool element was Tsuji wearing red, whereas Takeshita was in gray and black, like tradition of New Japan, the red versus the business, and just very plain black and gray colors. I entered more interested in this title match than most that New Japan has put on the last few years. And that is a credit to them for building a storyline that's intriguing and making it feel more important than perhaps it otherwise would be. The first hot sequence ended with a Canadian destroyer from Yota. Konosuke answered with a Blue Thunder Bomb Raging Fire for a late rope break. Takeshita later followed with a picture-perfect Avalanche Blue Thunder Bomb and a power drive for a false finish. Tsuji countered a second power drive attempt with a spear, moving into a Boston Crab for a tap-out submission victory. Excellent match. Did not necessarily feel the drama late as I have in prior New Japan matches like this, but there's no question the work was top tier from these guys. It could have main evented the show if not for what was going to come next. I went 4.5 stars and an A. Right as Tsuji was cutting his championship promo, basically a crowning moment for a new title holder that is supposed to lead the brand forward, he got attacked from behind by someone named Jake Lee, who I just personally do not know, as someone who has been relatively disconnected from New Japan for a while. So that could speak to my lack of, current knowledge of the product, or perhaps it was more random than we would have thought. My understanding is that these awful titles are not only being unified, which they have been, I should say already, but they're getting dropped for the return of the IWGP Heavyweight Championship, including not just the strap, but the old lineage as well, going back to the classic design and linking everything back together. That has been long needed. With Tanahashi in charge, it makes a lot of sense they would go back to the past and ensure that the tradition of New Japan carries forward. Another major news item that came out of this match was Tsuji effectively disbanding Bullet Club by merging the remains of that group with his faction to form something new they're calling Unbound Company, which really sounds like an outdoor clothing label here in the United States. So Bullet Club finally dies after 12 years of existence. They're not going to use the name anymore. They're not going to sell the shirts. I mean, I'm sure they'll still sell the shirts, but they're not going to, have anyone under that branding. They're not going to give it a new moniker of some kind, a secondary moniker. Bullet Club is gone, and that is pretty interesting. But again, this is all kind of playing into the new era of New Japan Pro Wrestling. So let's go to the main event. Hiroshi Tanahashi against Kazuchika Okada, a pre-planned and pre-announced retirement match. Beautiful video package before the match. Despite not understanding a word of what was said, the gravity of the situation could be felt at the bell. Okada did well getting heat early, including after hitting a ringside DDT. Tana did a really nice rolling senton off the ropes, and then standing high fly flow to the outside at 49 years old. He escaped Rainmaker with 3 twists and shouts, only to eat a tombstone pile driver. Okada delivered another literally on the ramp, with Ace selling it like he had been knocked out cold, all for a dramatic 19.5 count. They counted 20 there instead of 10. Okada added a spinning tombstone back inside, lifting Ace before 3 to draw more heat. The match was basically over already at this point, but he just kept picking him up, and it was to get heat on him, but also show that Tanahashi was basically done when he made his comeback. Anyway, he did the same thing after hitting another Rainmaker. Tana fought back while under wrist control, only to eat 2 more Rainmakers. He reversed a 4th attempt, ducked another, and then finally ate the 4th Rainmaker for a false finish. Okada then worked the back and knees with a Boston Crab. Tanahashi avoided another, countered with a Sling Blade. He added a PK, then did Shinsuke Nakamura's classic mannerisms, including leaning back in the corner, before landing, let's call it, as much of a Kinshasa as he could manage at his age and with his athletic ability at this time. Ace followed with high fly flow for a 2.5, then he countered Rainmaker for a Sling Blade and hit a double underhook German suplex bridge. A 3rd high fly flow was landed on Okada's back, but when he went for a 4th instead of a cover, Kazu got double knees up to block it. Tana tried to reverse a tombstone pile driver, but Okada countered that into like half a Destino. Nice callback, of course, to Tetsuya Naito. He landed Rainmaker for what seemed to be the death knell. The referee even sold it as such, but Ace lifted his arm at 2.9. It was all to build the drama so Tanahashi could go out like a warrior, crawling to his feet, only to take an elbow drop from Okada, who followed with his classic Rainmaker pose. No middle finger like earlier, so disrespected him before, came back and became the Rainmaker again to a degree, before hitting one last Rainmaker to beat Tanahashi. This was a beautiful match. It really was, especially for the final 10 minutes. A great moment after the bell where Okada bent down to pay respects to Tanahashi, who just was smiling wide while selling out on his back. From an in-ring standpoint, it's exactly what Ace's retirement needed to be. He struggled moving here, so in that respect, look, I'm not going to sit here and be disingenuous with you and say this was a 5-star bout or anything like that. Okay, I saw people calling it the greatest match of all time, one of the greatest matches of all time. I mean, no, it wasn't. It wasn't a top 10 New Japan match that I've ever seen, but it was awesome and it was beautiful. I don't know why there's this movement where everything has to be overrated, especially if it's from certain companies as opposed to another company, right? Like, this will probably get graded as like a crazy number by other people, whether it's for sentiment or other reasons. The bell-to-bell in the story was 4.5 stars and an A. It was better by direct comparison than John Cena's retirement match last month. It was not as good in ring as John Cena and AJ Styles, what they did. There were elements of that here with using, competitors' moves and prior feuds moves and stuff like that. There was emotional elements to this, just like you would see in Shawn Michaels against The Undertaker, a better wrestling match. But just like with the Cena retirement, this was not about the bell to bell. It was the entire spectacle around it. That's what was far more important. And this match was great. Like, an A is not a bad grade by any means. But when you have one guy who can barely move athletically and another guy who is nowhere near his peak, Okada I'm speaking about there, and they're just kind of trading moves, and there's not much drama in the finish because who is ultimately going to win. And the match was ended basically earlier and then just continued because Okada wanted to toy with him a little bit. It just, the flow of it was not something that was continuously raising the drama to reach an apex where then you say, oh my God, they landed the plane in 5 stars or whatever stars. Like, that's just not what it was. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. And by the way, not only did Tanahashi go out on his back to an opponent who did not need the rub, all right, just like Cena going out on his back to Gunther, you could say, he lost to a guy who's not even going to push New Japan forward because he left the promotion for AEW. Cena lost to a guy who was the president of WWE. My point being, if you had an issue with Cena losing, but not Tanahashi, you're kind of just telling on yourself at this point. Okada exited after a quick promo thanking Ace. Tanahashi then rose and literally got his flowers. Jay White came out with flowers and bowed to him. Will Ospreay did the same. Kenny Omega and a badly limping Kota Ibushi, the only one, by the way, not in a suit, he followed. Ibushi walking on his own at that distance without assistance on a broken femur was really impressive. He cried when hugging Ace. Katsuyori Shibata came out in an op shirt, so there were 2 that weren't wearing clothes. But there was a reason for that. I never would have guessed that White and Ospreay would be better dressed than Ibushi and Shibata. But unlike the rest, Shibata took off his shirt and did a brief, fun chop fight with Tanahashi before hugging him and crying. Kenji Muto, the Great Muta, honored him as well. After that procession, Tetsuya Naito came out holding his new Pro Wrestling Noah titles. He was, interestingly, the one to speak, putting over Ace, giving him a proper farewell and thanking him, for being the model for his career. Ace did his pose too. That was very sweet. Tanahashi then got a brief retirement speech before being thrown multiple oversized air guitars to play his way off into the sunset, or I guess the boardroom, because he's New Japan president. At least that's what I thought the ending was going to be. It wasn't. He asked the fans in the sold-out Tokyo Dome to do a wave. Then he stood for a 10-bell salute with a spotlight in the ring like he had died, and the crowd audibly started getting roused as this was happening. And then, that wasn't the end. He jumped on a moving platform and got wheeled around the entire Tokyo Dome so he could wave one last time to fans. Kind of like Cal Ripken Jr. running around the outfield, hitting everyone's hands. Then he cut a promo at the top of the stage saying he was so happy he fell in love with professional wrestling, and some pyro hit to truly end it. This was a retirement befitting an Ace. Kicked the shit out of what WWE did for Cena. Was far better than what AEW did for Sting as well. Made the Undertaker retirement in the Thunderdome at that Survivor Series show look like an absolute joke. The closest comparison, I guess, would be the Ric Flair retirement ceremony on Raw in 2008 after he lost to HBK at WrestleMania 24. Of course, Flair ruined that by wrestling on and off for 15 years afterward. Was it a bit overindulgent with Tanahashi, and did it go on too long? Well, yeah, it did. I mean, it was ridiculously over the top, but this was much closer to what a retirement for a man of his stature should be compared to what WWE put forward for Cena. You'll remember, they had a procession of superstars, not including legends and friends like Randy Orton. They had Cody Rhodes and CM Punk give him titles he didn't want to hold, and then they played a short video package and he just walked away. I mean, this should have been a whole ceremony for Cena, not like this, but there's definitely a middle ground between the two. And again, the fact that he didn't have moments with like Randy Orton, Batista, The Miz, Rusev, like it should have been Sheamus, Rey Mysterio, like it should have been one by one of him having a moment, then walking down the ramp and off into the sunset. Like you don't have to go as crazy as New Japan did with Tanahashi. But again, there was a middle ground between the two. It's impossible not to compare it to Cena because that happened less than a month ago. So just imagine if he got those moments. AJ Styles, The Undertaker, CM Punk. If he was able to say a few words at the end, that would have been nice. The key, though, and circling back to Tanahashi, you felt how important he was to the organization, and his legacy just shined through. It was fantastic. The match I gave 4.5 stars, because, that's kind of what it was. The retirement ceremony, 5 stars. A+. You guys absolutely knocked it out of the park. As with anything in wrestling, there was some consternation from a subsection of the fandom after this ended about Nakamura and Finn Balor not being there. Let's quickly recall what happened here. Nakamura wanted to be Tanahashi's final opponent. WWE was apparently okay with that. The only way New Japan would do it is if he was a free agent, because they did not want to upset Tony Khan by having a WWE superstar under contract on the show in that match. Tony Khan, who easily could have said, no, it's fine, our relationship will not be affected by this. Remember, WWE allows Bayley and Adam Cole backstage at AEW. They did for years. AEW and New Japan talent have been backstage at WWE shows multiple times. Kazuchika Okada, Hiroshi Tanahashi, they have been backstage at WWE shows. There's no reason why Nakamura could not have been his opponent. It speaks to how dependent New Japan is on AEW and that relationship these days, that they wouldn't even consider upsetting Tony by having Nakamura on the show or I don't know why he wasn't there. Like, he definitely should have been there either way, but not having him as the opponent. And let's not forget, neither Edge nor Chris Jericho showed up in WWE for Cena's retirement. So let's not act like it was some one-way situation. But I do wish Nakamura and Balor both could have been there. It's stupid that they were not. Let's just be completely candid about that. So that was everything that happened in New Japan. There was a New Year's Dash show afterward, and we could get into details on what transpired. But again, the interest level in New Japan has just really fallen off a bit. And what was most important here was the title change and Tanahashi's retirement, both of which were fantastic and totally worth watching. Speaking of things worth watching, it's WWE on Netflix. And the best way to do that is with NordVPN, because whether it's Raw, SmackDown, and NXT or premium live events, Silver King is all in using NordVPN to watch wrestling. It's easy to set up. It's a drastically better viewing experience. You get high quality streams and commercial free shows. All you have to do is sign up at nordvpn.com/gettingover, open the app, quick connect to another country like the United Kingdom, open Netflix, and watch that show. And when it comes to AEW pay-per-views or other specials, maybe things you possibly want to download and not watch live, if you're using NordVPN, it's a lot safer, because NordVPN also allows you to get around online censorship or surveillance, protect your private data when web browsing, and avoid online threats. Plus, one account, it can be used on 10 different devices. So get the best discount from NordVPN. Go to nordvpn.com/gettingover. Our link will give you 4 extra free months off the 2-year plan. And there's no risk, because Nord has a 30-day money-back guarantee. So improve your wrestling viewing, save money, browse safer online, and get the best discount for the best VPN. nordvpn.com/gettingover. We love having them as the official sponsor here of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. Let's move over to everything that happened this week in AEW. A new set debuted on Dynamite featuring 3 large screens, no more tunnels. It looked kind of similar to what WWE does with its larger TV sets these days, though with 2 separate entrances. I guess AEW still has the ability to do the face and heel side. I saw some people suggesting this looked cheaper and was cheaper. Now, smart people can disagree on what they prefer visually. AEW owned its set, so investing in something new is the opposite of cheap. It's spending more money to do what they believe will improve the product. I thought it looked good overall, and my guess is the reason they changed the set is for consistency. They're running a lot of smaller venues, and they can probably chop it in half to some degree and truncate it down for some of those tapings and then expand it up to what they're doing when they're in larger arenas. That's just my guess. I don't know that for a fact. 5 of 12 matches this week were storyline relevant, so back below 50% at 42%. The biggest issue was Collision, which was likely booked on a napkin and just thrown together, but we're back in that zone considering AEW is more than 2 months away from its next pay-per-view. Oh, Jim Ross was on the call for Dynamite. He did well enough. Certainly better than half the guys at that table. So Dynamite and Collision, we're going to break it all down in storyline order. On Dynamite, Hangman Page and Swerve obviously beat Powerhouse Hobbs and Hook in the lights out unsanctioned match. Usually in these matches, the lights go out to indicate AEW is no longer responsible, then they come back on. This time, they stayed out and spotlights were used. until they just suddenly turned back on at some point for no rhyme or reason. Does anyone actually think this shit through? There was a ridiculous spot where Hook ran around the ring post to help Swerve hit him with a Death Valley driver. The staple guns reappeared. Hobbs no-sold them until he took one to the crotch. As the faces brought out cinder blocks, Tony Schiavone bragged about AEW's fucking awards from SI and ESPN. Like, was he saying this, like bringing out cinder blocks is what makes AEW so great, why they were awarded? I was floored. Prince Nana prevented Swerve from taking a chair shot into the cinder blocks, only to get squashed in the corner. Swerve took a world's strongest slam into the blocks anyway for a broken fall. Random Ops Dojo guys came out, each of them looking more ridiculous than the next. They helped the participants beat the faces and wrap them together with a chain around their necks, a 6-on-2 advantage without Samoa Joe. Nana individually was able to turn the match by throwing coffee that had been in a cup for at least 20 minutes, probably 30, into Hobbs's face. Swerve and Hangman rallied. Hobbs countered Buckshot Lariat with a power slam, but Swerve broke the fall with a house call. Rather than hit Swerve Stomp on a guy laying on the canvas that he's fighting, Swerve turns around, does it into the dojo guys who were standing ringside doing nothing. How do you stomp people who are standing? And how could that have any impact? It doesn't make any sense unless you're hitting them directly on the shoulders. Hangman and Swerve combined for Deadeye into the cinder blocks on Hobbs. Hook then took a Buckshot Lariat before tapping out while being hung over the top rope with a chain. Attempted murder once again to end an AEW match. This just did not warrant a lights out stipulation. And as I said weeks ago, it should not have been this difficult for two former AEW champions to beat a pair of constant losers in Hobbs and Hook, even with the dojo interference. The career-long booking of Hobbs has been horrendous, by the way. As I've also said before, I love the Hangman Swerve pairing. The possibility of a great two-man power trip, that is so attractive. You could have them win the international title, the world title, and the tag team championships, and really have something going there. But why exactly did Hangman need Swerve's help to get revenge on Hook individually? Because that guy cost him the AEW title. This was the definition of doing shit just to do it. It fell way below expectations. I usually don't grade matches below a certain level on TV, but I'm going to give you a 3 stars B- just so you understand the way I categorized it after watching. On Dynamite, Jon Moxley fought Shelton Benjamin in a Continental Classic Eliminator match. I just want you to remember this. Continental Classic Eliminator champion involved. Title not on the line. Mox cut a stairway promo, putting over the Classic as the greatest achievement in professional wrestling, given what it takes to win. He also put over Shelton a bit. Benjamin on Collision beat Dante Martin in an awful 10-minute match. MVP then cut a promo on Mox, saying they aren't interested in a revolution, just money, and while Mox is dangerous, Benjamin is even more dangerous. He said he was going to tell us why. He never actually gave us a reason. It was just MVP filling time. Mox obviously beat Benjamin to, I was going to say retain, but to prevent him from getting a title match. Now, these matches have 20-minute time limits, you'll recall. Mox won with 5 seconds remaining. He kicked out of a pump knee from Shelton, countered a triangle choke with a tiptoe cover for the 1-2-3. The finish was better than the match, B-level. Expected more from these two. They generally put on some of the best hard-hitting bouts in AEW, and they interestingly shook hands afterward. On Collision, Darby Allin beat Wheeler Yuta in 2 hours. This was the lone relevant match on that show Saturday. Toni Storm attacked Marina Shafir from behind while she wasn't really doing anything. Mox was on commentary. Allin not only beat Yuta, but took out Garcia with ease at ringside. There was one excellent spot during the match. Darby ate a Bazaiku knee on the ring apron, twisting and turning in the air before landing on his back ringside. Crazy visual. Unfortunately, the finish was absurd, as Allin not only had to do multiple coffin drops, he tried the Scorpion Deathlock, fell down immediately because he wasn't able to lock it in, and Yuta tapped out anyway, despite there being no leverage on the move. So this leaves Pac as the only guy Darby has not defeated yet. Hopefully, the Death Rider shit ends afterwards. That was my thought. We saw the Death Riders multiple times on the two shows. We never saw Pac with them at all until there were 20 minutes left on Dynamite. He said while backstage that he would not rematch Darby because he beat him already and their issue was decided. Allin insisted. Pac declined multiple times. So Darby sprayed him with a fire extinguisher, ran him into a garage door, hit him in the neck with his skateboard, and threatened to break his ankle in a door until he ultimately gave him the rematch. Darby is a babyface, by the way. A babyface who went on a losing streak after beating Mox. And he's attacking and threatening a guy who I don't believe did anything specifically wrong to him. I'm trying to remember. Was he involved in that spot off the stage during Blood and Guts? Maybe that's what it was. So, okay, he's angry at him for that. But he's like nicely walking up to him, asking for a rematch. And then he's going so far as to threaten breaking his ankle. And Pac is a coward to the degree that he relents. So a door doesn't get closed on his foot. I don't know. This just needs to end. And hopefully, as soon as Darby beats Pac, it does. On Collision, there was basically a Ring of Honor segment backstage with Sammy Guevara yelling at champion Bandido for being in a featured spot he should be. Sammy challenged him for a Dynamite, promising to do something so heinous that he would take out Bandido and steal his spot. Bandido no-sold it, saying, dude, you could have just asked for a match. This was overacted by Guevara, and as I will say again later, the relevance of this segment comes from a different brand. Why can't AEW fill 4 hours of TV with relevant content from its main brand? And if it can't, then you need to get rid of Collision and make, I hate to say it, make Dynamite a 3-hour show. Because that's what it's coming to. On Dynamite, Bandido beat Sammy Guevara in a non-title match, gave this relevancy credit despite the aforementioned issues. Bandido did a great pop-up cutter. Guevara had an excellent flip-out counter of a 21-plex, hitting a flip-over DDT. His nose got busted open hard way during his sequence. Bandido ultimately caught Guevara's foot and flipped him over in a great spot, hitting a 21-plex afterward. Best match on the show by a good bit. I believe it was my favorite match of the week in AEW. No clue what Sammy did that was supposed to be so heinous. Perhaps I missed it. I fast-forwarded during commercial breaks. Maybe he did it during break or right after and I missed it somehow. But that was a letdown to promise something like that and not deliver. Still, 4 stars, A-. Really nice match. MJF interrupted after the bell with some random dude in a suit. He said he's a Lucha Libre legend and a bigger star in Mexico than Bandido, who has a level of potential going for him. He revealed that this guy was a translator, and this guy cut a better promo in Spanish than plenty of dudes in AEW do in English. MJF followed with cheap heat on Tulsa, asking for the Dynamite Diamond ring back since it belonged to him. He said if Bandido gave up the ring and gave up his title match too, then he would put him over to Tony Khan, and he would be willing to wrestle Bandido on a pay-per-view in, 5 or 10 years. Bandido got angry, calling him a stupid son of the bitch in English, so MJF kicked him down low, stole the ring off his finger. Bandido avoided a punch, returned the favor, stealing the ring back before hitting 21-plex on the translator, and then MJF, who stood in position for this. You have to understand, holding the middle rope, bent over, like you're going to take it from behind, okay? He was holding that position for, 45, 60 seconds. It was ridiculous. But considering the heat and the execution, you could say this was the best segment of the whole week in AEW. In fact, it was a better build for an AEW title match on television than the company has delivered ahead of multiple pay-per-views. I'm actually looking forward to this on TV next week after coming into the segment rather indifferent. That's how you know something is successful, and this was very successful. On Collision, Timeless Love Bombs beat High-In and Maya World. It took the top woman on the roster and someone who was supposed to be booked well, 10 minutes to put away these 2 low-carders. Then on Collision, the Mega Problems beat 2 jobbers in 90 seconds, back-to-back dreadful segments. On Dynamite, Toni Storm beat Marina Shafir via disqualification in 8 minutes. 8 minutes of women's wrestling on the entire show, less than 20 minutes for the week. Shafir booted Storm in the chest, which is now, her finisher or something. Yuta pulled the referee out of the ring. That led to a DQ, which was absurd. Toni got distracted. So Marina, punched her in the throat or something. Then Mina Shirakawa runs in, takes the same boot to the chest, but they're completely in the wrong position. Shafir should have been 3 feet further back. So she kicks Shirakawa in the chest. And the whole gimmick, because everything has to be about sex in this storyline or something related to it, is that the goal was for her to fall on top of Storm. So Mina gets kicked in the chest, basically against the ropes, and has to flail her body across the entire ring so that she can fall on top of Toni Storm. It looked absolutely ridiculous. Roderick Strong and Orange Cassidy then saved Luther from being attacked. Orange lifted up and put his arms around the face women after the bell. Are they having a threesome? Is that the storyline we're getting here? What is the deal? There have been people gaslighting you online into believing that, first of all, everything with Toni Storm and Mina Shirakawa is good, which it is not. But believing that Shafir has not only improved, but is the most improved wrestler or a breakout star, she's terrible. I'm not saying she's bad in ring necessarily. She has legitimacy. There's no doubt about that. There is no entertainment in watching her in the ring. And the way she's being booked is atrocious. It's they finally decided, well after the Death Rider story reached its apex, hey, we're going to try to turn her into someone who competes in the ring. Are they going to give her a title? Is she going to beat Willow for the TNT Championship? Is that what, TBS Championship? Is that what's going to happen? Because, yeah, that doesn't work for me, brother. On Dynamite, Willow Nightingale, speaking of, got a TBS Championship celebration segment. She looks to have stolen a neon M that Mercedes Moné previously had, turning it upside down into a W for her entrance. There were some unfortunate production issues, including the ring lights going out here. Chris Statlander and Harley Cameron were there with her. Willow said she knew times were going to be hard going forward, but she wanted to celebrate the good times now. She called Harley busty, then put over Stat heavy, despite, again, there being no actual on-screen reason for them resolving their issues and totally getting back together as friends. Willow said she'd consider defending the titles twice in one night if necessary. And then she said, since she knows segments like these always end in interruptions because it's professional wrestling, whoever wants to come out, they can do so, including Monet. So yeah, Mercedes entered in white funeral attire, which was unique. Nightingale basically filleted Monet when she entered, putting her over, and she goes, why don't you have some cake with us? So Mercedes took off her veil, showing a pre-messed up wig and makeup that was doctored to have run on her face. She yelled, pushed over a dessert table, shoved Harley, and then got shoved into Stat, who was holding a cake. So she got cake all over her, and then Willow did a doctor bomb into the cake to end it. And they literally did a conga line in the ring at the end of the segment. I very much liked the majority of this. And I did like Willow's promo. The Statlander of it all is extremely annoying, and Monet not being able to articulate anything or actually show some character growth, just throwing a fit after being roundly praised, by the way, by Willow, that did not hit for me at all. Plus, Mercedes still has, 8 titles? She's losing a title. It's not like she's no longer a champion. So this looked like it was going to be an A-grade segment if I was grading it. It wound up a B, though. 3 sets of women's champions in the ring, by the way. 0 new challengers, though it does look like Thekla is going to emerge, and maybe the Sisters of Sin will go after the tag team titles. Speaking of them, Thekla led a Triangle of Madness promo at the 3 Faces, challenging them to a trios match. Not sure if they took our note, but the Sisters of Sin no longer spoke together like they were in a creepy horror movie. However, they did speak one after another, both with 0 intonation into their words. I'm going to say my next sentence like they speak. The idea is they are supposed to be dead behind the eyes. But in reality, it just shows that they have no characters and have made no improvement since joining the company. That's how they're cutting promos. Thekla individually is doing great. Apples to apples, she is thriving in AEW, whereas Julia is struggling in WWE. It has come, though, at somewhat of a cost for the Sisters of Sin, which are basically being proven to be lesser than AEW was purporting them to be, and at the level we all knew they were previously. On Collision, Jet Speed beat Big Bill and Brian Keith in a match that only happened because Bill told us 5 seconds before the bell rang that they were collecting a bounty put on the baby faces. Now, if they were regularly fighting matches for that reason, such as the APA back in the day, and maybe that's what their gimmick should be now, but if they were doing that, I'd give storyline relevance credit. Unfortunately, that was not the case here. And if you're going to have bounty hunters on a show, they need to win. They can't be losing to Jet Speed. On Collision, El Clone beat Angelico. I guess they remembered this character existed. I also presume that Hologram is coming back soon. Obviously, no reason for this match happening. On Collision, Josh Alexander cut a promo backstage while holding a nobody in an ankle lock with other Don Callis family nobodies beating up randoms. He also said Hechicero was about to wrestle a TNT title eliminator match that was actually a number 1 contendership because the champion was not involved. Remember, we talked about that earlier. And Hechicero beat Commander, despite neither guy deserving to be put in the spot, nor there being any storyline reason for the match happening. B-level bout. Mark Briscoe cut a manic, as usual, promo from his chicken farm on Dynamite. It was entertaining because Mark is always entertaining. But because there's no reason for this match happening, and they have no heat and they have no feud, he said nothing that mattered, and the match is going to happen next week, and we'll all forget about it. Dynamite opened with Don Callis saying he made a deal with the Demand. Then he introduced Jake Doyle, the former Jake something in TNA, and started smacking him really hard in the chest, saying he is going to kill people. Not kill them like beat them, but like actually kill them. I cannot believe they added another member to this faction. The dude does look like an absolute beast, though. On Dynamite, Jack Perry and the Young Bucks beat the Demand in the second match on the show. This came out of the national title match last week, so even though that pretty much happened for no reason, I did give it relevance credit. The Bucks came out in their old 80s style gear with a super kick party entrance and immediately two major issues. First, I called this out 2 weeks ago. The Bucks said they were injured and done for the year at the end of 2025. So they made a whole to-do of their absence, only to miss a normal amount of time that did not need to be explained. Second, when Jack came back after being in the Elite and disappearing from TV, he said he hated the Bucks because they didn't help him as they promised they were going to. Yet now they are his surprise partners in an unexplained situation. Really? That's what we're doing. This match went 13 minutes. If you are fans of these three faces, you loved it. If you're not, like I am not, then this could have been an email. We've seen most of it before. Most impressive was actually the heel side, who overpowered the tiny faces with some big-time offense. Their arrow continues to point up, Gates of Agony, but they aren't getting booked like it, nor do most larger men in this company, with the exception of Samoa Joe. Ricochet taking the fall as a brand new singles champion was probably the most frustrating part. There was a brawl after the bell with Jet Speed saving. The lights went out at the end, and Andrade El Idolo returned in his mask, rejoining, I guess, the Don Callis family for the second time. So a faction that already has 27 people added 2 more in one night, and Andrade's return completely overshadowed Jake's debut, really for no reason whatsoever. They could have saved it. On Collision, Eddie Kingston and Ortiz did an in-ring promo where Eddie spent the first 5 minutes talking about birthdays in the crowd. He said he's quit AEW 8 times since he's returned, but now he's got Ortiz by his side, so he's cool. So the babyface is expressing unhappiness with his job. He's not listening to his employer telling him to get away from the birthdays and actually talk about wrestling. And that's a good thing? Okay. They called out GYV, and I had to look it up. I guess they're feuding in Ring of Honor, and Kingston fought Zach Gibson on a 0-hour match I missed at World's End. There was no video telling AEW viewers about the ongoing feud to allow this to make sense, and the only entertaining part was Kingston shredding Tony Schiavone for not knowing how to hold a damn microphone near his mouth. This was a full hour into Collision. I already could not fathom a show being worse than this in 2026. We talk about best show of the year, worst show of the year. I think so far we would say the first SmackDown of 2026, surprisingly, was the best show of the year. This Collision is the worst show of the year, and those are what everything else will be compared to as 2026 transpires. Anyway, GYV, after this segment, cut their first AEW promo in forever, saying Kingston and Ortiz are New York street rats. Gibson was on point as usual. This and a brief video package should have preceded the in-ring segment to set up the reason for the faces speaking. Despite my distaste for this, it's a positive that tag teams are now being featured again in AEW, and it seems like they're trying to rebuild both the tag team division and the trios division, and that overall is a huge positive. So that wraps up the week in AEW. Obviously frustrating. It did kind of seem like a holiday hangover, 4 hours of television, and that's allowed. WWE does it as well, and NXT certainly does that sometimes. I would really like to see AEW kind of hunker down and get their shit back together next week, because Dynamite especially had been much better over the ensuing months. This week, though, it was 4 hours of forgettable TV and not much to really write home about, which again, I'm hopeful they will fix sooner than later. So that wraps up this edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. Just updating our schedule for you here. We will have a 3-episode week next week on Monday, the 2025 Getting Over Awards, aka The Meaties. On Tuesday, your WWE episode, and on Thursday, our regular NXT and AEW show. Performance-enhancing audio coming to your ear holes. If you happen to be a first-time listener, make sure you hit that subscribe button wherever you listen to podcasts. I do need to tell you on the way out,
I happen to love the number 5.
especially since I didn't say it before. For $5 a month or $50 for the entire year, you can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You'll get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major show, exclusive news analysis posts weekly as well. Support us. We continue to support you. Buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Getting Overcast on Twitter and Blue Sky. You get episode drops, news, analysis, highlights. You can send in questions and comments for the show on YouTube. You can listen to our shows, and you can watch full-length video interviews that we conduct. Our final two of 2025 were with Natalia, Natty Neidhart, and Ethan Page. And please remember,
It's all about the fight.
so head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Thank you all so much for your patience this week as our schedule got shifted around. And of course, for listening to the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. This is the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, signing off and leaving you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.